The stars had always called too. Even as a child growing up in the crowded cities of Earth, she would climb to the rooftops at night and stare at the sky. She never dreamed of wealth or power. She only wanted to know what secrets waited out there in the darkness between stars. Now, 30 years later, she stood on the bridge of a small research vessel called the Horizon's Edge, watching an unknown moon grow larger on the. Her heart was beating fast. Something was wrong with their navigation computer, and they had dropped out of hyperspace in a system that existed on no map. Captain stood beside her, arms crossed, her face tight with worry. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and silver streaks in her black hair. She had commanded survey ships for 15 years, and she had never seen anything like this. "The computer says this system does not exist," said quietly, "but here we are." Did not answer. She was staring at the moon below them. It was small and gray, covered with ancient craters, but her instruments were showing something impossible. Energy readings were coming from beneath the surface, energy patterns that matched no known technology. "Captain," said from his station. He was the ship's medic, a calm man with gentle hands and a soft voice. "I am picking up structures underground. They are very old, maybe thousands of years old." Turned to look at him. "Natural formations." "No," said, "someone built them." The crew gathered around the main screen as pulled up the sensor data. The structures formed a complex pattern deep beneath the moon's surface. Corridors and chambers carved from solid rock, and at the center, a single room that glowed with power. Felt something strange in her chest. It was like a whisper she could almost hear, like someone calling her name from very far away. "I need to go down there," she said. Shook her head. "We do not know what is down there. It could be dangerous." "I know," said, "but I have to see it. This is why I became this is what I have been searching for my whole life." The captain studied her for a long moment. Was not a soldier or an adventurer. She was a scholar who spent most of her time reading old texts and studying dead languages. But there was something in her eyes now, a certainty that had never seen before. "Fine," said, "but you take with you, and you stay in contact at all times." The shuttle dropped through the thin atmosphere and landed near a crater that the sensors said connected to the underground structures, and put on their environmental suits and stepped out onto the gray dust. The entrance was hidden in the shadow of a cliff. It was a perfect circle carved into the rock, 3 meters wide. The edges were smooth, as if the stone had been melted rather than cut. "This is first builder architecture," whispered. Her voice was shaking. "I have seen pictures in old texts, but no one has ever found an intact site." Looked at her. "First builders, the ones from the legends." "They are not just legends," said. 12,000 years ago there was a civilization that ruled this entire galaxy. They seeded life on 1,000 worlds. Then they disappeared. No one knows why. They walked into the tunnel. Their helmet lights pushed back the darkness, revealing walls covered with patterns that seemed to shift and move. Tried to read them, but the symbols were unlike anything she had studied. They were not writing. They were something else, something deeper. The tunnel sloped downward for nearly a kilometer before opening into a vast chamber. Stopped and stared. The ceiling rose so high that their lights could not reach it. The walls curved in ways that should have been impossible. And at the center of the room, on a pedestal of black stone, sat a sphere no larger than her fist. It was beautiful. Inside the sphere, tiny galaxies swirled in endless dance. Stars were born and died in the span of seconds. Colors that had no names for rippled across its surface. "The heart," she breathed. Every spacefaring species knew the legend. An artifact of impossible power, created by the first builders before they vanished. It was said to give its wielder control over space itself. For 12,000 years, empires had searched for it. Wars had been fought over rumors of its location. And here it was, in front of her, glowing softly in the darkness. Grabbed her arm. "We need to report this to the captain. We need to. A sound cut through his words, a deep vibration that felt in her bones more than heard with her ears. The heart was pulsing brighter now. It knew she was there. On the ship above, was trying to reach them when her sensor officer shouted in alarm. "Captain, hyperspace signature, something big is coming." The flashed white as a massive ship dropped out of hyperspace barely 1,000 kilometers away. It was a dreadnought, one of the most powerful warships in the known galaxy. Its hull was covered with weapons, and its engines glowed with barely contained power. A communication signal cut through all frequencies. The face that appeared on screen was reptilian, with scales of deep blue and eyes like molten gold. Commander of the Fourth Fleet. "Human vessel," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "You are trespassing in space claimed by the Empire. You will withdraw immediately or you will be destroyed." Kept her voice steady. "This system is not on any charts. It belongs to no one." His eyes narrowed. "It belongs to us now. The artifact below is the property of the Empire. We have searched for it for 1,000 years. We will not share it with primitives." On the moon's surface, heard none of this. She was walking toward the pedestal, drawn by a force she did not understand. The heart was singing to her, not with sound but with something older than sound, something that reached into the deepest parts of her mind and called her forward. She reached out her hand, and the artifact began to glow brighter than any star. Commander had waited his entire life for this moment. His grandfather had begun the search. His father had continued it. And now, after 3 generations of hunting through ancient ruins and following broken clues, the had finally found the heart. He would not let a primitive species take it from him. The landing craft touched down near the human shuttle. 20 soldiers in heavy armor stepped out, their weapons ready, led them personally. He was tall even for his species, his blue scales dark with age and experience. He had fought in 12 wars. He had conquered worlds. A simple human archaeologist would not stop him. The tunnel was exactly as the old texts described. The symbols on the walls seemed to watch him as he passed. His soldiers were nervous, but felt only excitement. The power of the first builders would soon belong to the Empire. They would rule the galaxy as it was meant to be ruled. When he entered the central chamber, he saw 2 humans standing before the pedestal. The man was trying to pull the woman away, but she would not move. Her hand was reaching toward the glowing sphere. "Step away from the artifact," commanded. His voice echoed through the vast space. "It does not belong to you." The woman turned to look at him. She was small and fragile like all humans. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear, with wonder, as if she was seeing something beautiful for the first time. "I do not think it belongs to anyone," she said softly. "I think it has been waiting." Pushed past her, he had no time for human philosophy. The heart was pulsing with light, responding to the presence of living beings. He could feel its power calling to him. This was his destiny. He reached out and grasped the sphere. Pain exploded through his body. Light brighter than any sun blinded him. He felt himself lifted off his feet and thrown backward through the air. He crashed into 2 of his soldiers, and they all tumbled to the ground in a pile of armored bodies. When he could see again, the chamber was still. The heart sat on its pedestal, glowing gently. It had not moved. "Commander," one of his soldiers helped him to his feet. "Are you injured?" Was not injured, but something had broken inside him anyway. He had trained for this moment for decades. He had studied every text, performed every ritual. He was supposed to be worthy. "Kill her," he snarled, pointing at the human woman. "Kill them both. Take the artifact by force." His soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the woman spoke again. "Wait," she said, "please wait." And the heart rose from its pedestal. It floated through the air like a living thing. The galaxies inside it swirled faster. Colors rippled across its surface in patterns that seemed almost like thoughts. The soldiers backed away in fear as it passed over their heads. It stopped in front of the woman. It hovered at the level of her chest, pulsing softly, waiting. She looked at it for a long moment. Her hands were trembling, was whispering to her, telling her not to touch it, telling her they needed to run. But she did not run. Slowly, carefully, she cupped her hands beneath the sphere. It settled into her palms like a bird coming home to its nest. The light that had been so violent before became gentle, warm. The entire chamber filled with a soft golden glow. Gasped, images flooded her mind. She saw beings of pure light walking among the stars. She saw them creating worlds, seeding life across 1,000 galaxies. She saw them building the heart as a gift for their children, all the species that would come after them. And she saw them ascending, leaving the physical universe behind, trusting that someday someone would be ready. She understood now. She understood why every empire that had searched for the artifact had failed to claim it. They had all come seeking power. They had all wanted to use it as a weapon. But the first builders had not created a weapon. They had created a choice. On the horizon's edge, Captain watched the energy reading spike beyond anything her instruments could measure. The entire moon was glowing now. Ships across the galaxy, ships that had sensors capable of detecting quantum fluctuations, were picking up the signal. The heart had been silent for 12,000 years. Now it was singing again. "Captain," the sensor officer said, his voice barely a whisper, "what is happening down there?" Did not answer. She could only watch and pray that her people would survive whatever was coming. In the chamber below, stared at the human woman with a mix of rage and disbelief. This was impossible. She was nothing. A scientist from a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. How could the artifact choose her? "This is a trick," he said. "Some human technology that fooled the sensors. The artifact did not choose you. It cannot choose someone like you." Looked at him with sad eyes. "It chose me because I did not want it," she said. "I came here only to learn, to understand. I never wanted power." "Everyone wants power," spat. "No," said, "not everyone. That is what you never understood. That is why you failed." Drew his sidearm. If he could not claim the artifact, he would destroy the one who had taken it from him. His soldiers raised their weapons as well, forming a circle around the two humans. But before anyone could fire, the heart pulsed once. A wave of golden light swept through the chamber. When it passed, every weapon in the room had vanished. The soldiers looked at their empty hands in shock. "I do not want to fight you," said. "Please, let us talk. Let us understand each other." His answer was a roar of fury. He charged at her with his bare hands, claws extended. He had killed enemies in close combat before. He would tear this human apart and take what was rightfully his. He never reached her. The light wrapped around him like gentle hands. It lifted him off his feet, held him suspended in the air. He struggled, but he could not move. The light was not hurting him. It was simply stopping him. "Why?" he demanded. "Why her? What makes humans special?" The heart pulsed again and for just a moment saw what it seen. The first builders, their gift, their hope for the future. He saw that the artifact had not chosen humans because they were strong. It had chosen this one human because she was humble, because she had walked into this chamber with no desire except to learn. The light set him down gently on the floor. His soldiers helped him stand. The fight had gone out of him. He did not understand. He might never understand. But he knew, with terrible certainty, that his people had lost something they would never get back. "This is not over," he said quietly. "The galaxy will not accept this. They will come for you, all of them." Nodded sadly, she already knew. "Let them come," she said. "I will be here." News spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every major power knew what had happened. The heart, the most powerful artifact in known history, had awakened after 12,000 years of silence, and it had chosen a human. Ships began arriving the next day. First came the Dominion, a militaristic empire that ruled through fear and strength. Their warships were massive things of black metal, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral Bora, the commander of their fleet, sent a simple message to the horizon's edge: surrender the artifact within 1 hour or face total destruction. Then came the Collective, the oldest surviving species in the galaxy. They were thin beings with gray skin and eyes that saw more than light. They did not threaten. They did not demand. They simply arrived in their strange organic ships and waited, watching everything with their unreadable faces. More fleets followed. The Union, the Free World's Confederation, the merchant princes of the Outer Rim, species that had been at war with each other for centuries now sat in the same system, united by a single purpose: claiming the heart for themselves. Captain stood on her bridge, watching the fill with hostile ships. The horizon's edge was a research vessel. It had no weapons beyond basic point defense systems. They were surrounded by enough firepower to destroy a star. "How many ships now?" she asked quietly. 47 warships from 12 different empires, her sensor officer replied, and more are arriving every hour. Closed her eyes. They were going to die here, all of them, and there was nothing she could do about it. In the chamber below the moon's surface, sat with the heart floating beside her, had brought supplies from the shuttle, and they had made a small camp in the ancient ruins. Neither of them had slept since the artifact had chosen her. "You need to rest," said gently. "You have been awake for 30 hours. "I cannot sleep," replied. "Every time I close my eyes I see them, the first builders. They show me things, their history, their hopes, their fears." She looked at the artifact with tired eyes. The galaxies inside it continued their eternal dance, beautiful and strange. "They loved their children," she said. "All the species that came after them. They watched us evolve, watched us build our first civilizations, watched us reach for the stars. They were so proud and so worried." "Worried about what?" "About power," sighed. "They knew that as we grew stronger we would face a choice. Would we use our power to help each other, or would we use it to destroy?" Looked at the sphere. "And this artifact, what is it supposed to do?" "It is a teacher," said, "and a test. The first builders created it to find someone worthy, someone who could show the galaxy a different way." "Why you?" Laughed softly. It was a sad sound. "I have been asking myself that question since it chose me. I am nobody, a scholar who studies dead languages. I have never led anyone. I have never done anything important." "Maybe that is why," said. "Maybe they wanted someone who would not be corrupted by the power." Before could answer, a communication came through from the ship. Captain's voice was tight with stress. "They have given us their final warning. They say if we do not surrender the artifact in 30 minutes, they will begin firing. They are willing to destroy the entire moon to get it." Stood up, the heart rose with her, following like a loyal pet. "Captain, I need you to broadcast a message for me, to everyone, all the fleets, all the ships." "What are you going to say?" "The truth." 10 minutes later, every in the system showed face. She stood in the ancient chamber, the heart glowing beside her. She looked small and tired and very human, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "My name is," she said. "I am from Earth. 3 days ago I found this place by accident. I did not come here looking for power. I did not know what I would find. I only wanted to learn." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I know why you are all here. You want the heart. You have been searching for it for thousands of years. You believe it will make you powerful. You believe it will let you conquer your enemies and rule the galaxy." On the dreadnought, Commander watched in silence. On the flagship, Admiral Bora leaned forward in her command chair. In their strange organic ships, the collective observed with ancient eyes. "But you are wrong," continued. "The first builders did not create this artifact for conquest. They created it as a gift for all their children, not just one species, all of us." She raised her hand, and the heart floated above her palm. This is what I have learned. The first builders could have ruled forever. They had power beyond anything we can imagine, but they chose to leave. They chose to let us grow on our own, because they believed that we could become something beautiful, that we could learn to live together, to help each other, to be better than we were. Her voice grew soft. They have been waiting 12,000 years for someone to understand, for someone to see that power without wisdom is meaningless, that strength without compassion only leads to destruction. She looked directly into the camera. I am not special. I am just someone who came here with no expectations, someone who only wanted to learn. But if that is what the first builders were looking for, then maybe there is hope for all of us. Maybe we can be better than we have been. She lowered her hand. I am not going to fight you. I am not going to run. I am going to stay here in this place where the first builders left their gift, and I am going to wait. If you want to destroy me, you can try, but I hope you will listen instead. I hope you will think about what kind of galaxy you want to live in. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, there was silence across the entire system. Then Admiral Bora gave an order and the fleet powered up their weapons. Their flagship turned toward the moon, its main cannon glowing with terrible light. The storm was about to break. The first missile launched from the flagship like a streak of white fire. It was followed by a dozen more. Each one carried enough explosive power to level a mountain. Together, they would turn the ancient chamber into a crater of melted glass. On the horizon's edge, Captain screamed for her crew to brace for impact. There was nothing they could do. Their ship was directly between the missiles and the moon. They would be destroyed first. In the chamber below saw nothing, but she felt everything. The heart showed her the missiles racing toward them. It showed her the fear on Captain's face. It showed her the cold satisfaction in Admiral Bora's eyes. And it asked her a question. Not in words. The first builders had left language behind long ago, but the meaning was clear. What do you want? Closed her eyes. She thought of her crew, of standing beside her with his gentle hands and kind heart, of who had trusted her enough to let her come down here, of all the people who would die if she did nothing. She thought of the soldiers in those missiles. They were not evil. They were just following orders. They had families who loved them, children who waited for them to come home. She thought of Admiral Bora on her flagship, a woman who had spent her whole life fighting because she had never known another way, who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered because weakness had only ever brought her pain. I want everyone to live, thought. I want them all to see that there is another way. The heart understood. The missiles vanished. On the flagship, Admiral Bora stared at her tactical display in disbelief. The weapons had simply disappeared from existence. One moment they were racing toward their target. The next, they were gone. What happened? She demanded. Where did they go? Her officers searched frantically, but there was nothing to find. The missiles had not exploded. They had not been destroyed. They had simply stopped existing. Then the sensors found them again. They had reappeared in empty space, millions of kilometers away, floating harmlessly in the void, their engines dead. This is impossible, Bora whispered. On the dreadnought, Commander watched with growing unease. He had seen the heart reject him. He had felt its power throw him across the room. But this was something different. This was control on a level he could not comprehend. The collective said nothing, but in their strange organic ships, their minds touched each other in silent conversation. They had watched the galaxy for longer than any other species. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had never seen anything like this. Admiral Bora was not ready to surrender. The Dominion had not conquered half the galaxy by accepting defeat. Launch the boarding pods, she ordered. Send every soldier we have. Take that artifact by force. 50 pods dropped from the warships and raced toward the moon. Each one carried a squad of elite soldiers in heavy armor. They were the best fighters in the known galaxy. They had never lost a battle. The pods landed around the entrance to the underground structure. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready. They charged into the tunnels, their boots echoing on the ancient stone. They never reached the chamber. One by one, they felt themselves lifted off their feet, not violently, gently, like parents picking up sleepy children. Golden light wrapped around them, warm and soft. Their weapons fell from their hands. Their armor felt suddenly heavy and useless. And then they were somewhere else. They blinked and found themselves back on their own ships, standing in corridors, sitting in mess halls, lying in their bunks. They had no memory of how they had gotten there. The last thing they remembered was the golden light. Not one of them had been hurt. Admiral Bora stared at her soldiers as they wandered around her flagship in confusion. Her hands were shaking. In her entire career, she had never felt fear like this. The artifact could have killed them all. It could have destroyed her entire fleet with a thought. Instead, it had simply sent her soldiers home. She did not understand. War made sense to her. Victory and defeat, life and death. These were simple things. But mercy from something that had absolute power. On the horizon's edge, watched the sensors with tears in his eyes. He was a medic. He had spent his life healing people after the violence was done. He had always hated war, and now he was watching something he had never believed possible. "She is doing it," he said softly. "She is actually doing it." Nodded slowly. Her hands were still gripping the arms of her command chair, but her fear was fading, replaced by something that felt almost like hope. In the chamber below opened her eyes. The heart floated beside her, its light gentle now. She felt tired. Using the artifact was not like pushing a button. It required her to be completely open, to feel everything, to care about everyone. It was exhausting, but it was also beautiful. "They will try again," said. "I know," replied. "But every time they try, they will see that violence does not work. Maybe eventually they will be ready to listen." The standoff continued. They launched more attacks. They attempted their own assault. Even some of the smaller powers tried to sneak soldiers through hidden routes. Every attempt failed. No one was hurt. No one was killed. The golden light simply returned them to where they had started, confused but unharmed. Hours passed. The fleets grew quiet. Commanders who had spent their lives studying war found themselves with nothing to fight. The artifact could not be destroyed. It could not be captured, and its wielder refused to strike back. In the silence, something began to change. On one of the ships, a young officer looked at the moon on her and wondered what the human woman was really thinking. On a destroyer, a grizzled soldier who had been returned to his bunk lay staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why he was still alive. The heart had not just stopped the violence. It had planted a question in every mind that witnessed its power. What kind of galaxy do we want to live in? And for the first time in a very long time, the answer was not obvious. The standoff lasted 3 standard days. 3 days of failed attacks and impossible returns. 3 days of growing confusion among the gathered fleets. 3 days of commanders staring at tactical displays that showed no path to victory. On the morning of the 4th day, the first ship left. It was a small cruiser, barely worth noticing among the massive dreadnoughts. Its captain was a young woman named who had spent the last 3 days thinking about what she had witnessed. She had joined the military to protect her people, but watching the artifact return her fellow soldiers unharmed, again and again, had changed something inside her. She sent a brief message to her commanding officer, turned her ship around and jumped into hyperspace. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay here anymore. More ships followed, one by one at first, then in groups. Soldiers who had expected to fight found themselves unable to remember why fighting mattered so much. Officers who had spent their careers winning battles suddenly questioned what they had been winning. Admiral Bora was the last commander to leave. She stood on her bridge, staring at the moon where a single human woman had defeated her entire fleet without lifting a finger. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Pride told her to stay, to find some way to win. But pride was not enough anymore. Before she gave the order to retreat, she opened a private channel to the surface. "Human," she said, her voice rough, "can you hear me?" There was a pause. Then the archaeologist's tired face appeared on the screen. "I can hear you, Admiral." Bora studied her for a long moment. This woman who had changed everything. She was small and fragile and utterly unremarkable, and yet she had done what no warrior in history had ever accomplished. "Why did you not kill us?" Bora asked. "You have the power. We would have destroyed you without hesitation." Smiled sadly. "That is exactly why I did not." "I do not understand." "I know," said, "but maybe someday you will." The fleet departed. The followed. Empire by empire, the gathered forces retreated from the system. Some left in anger, some left in confusion, a few left in something that almost resembled shame. Only the collective remained. Their strange organic ships had not moved since they first arrived. They had not attacked. They had not threatened. They had simply watched. Now, as the last of the other fleets vanished into hyperspace, they finally spoke. The message appeared on every screen in the horizon's edge, simultaneously. "We have observed this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have watched species destroy themselves with the very power they sought. In all that time, we have never seen what we witness today." Captain read the words aloud to her crew, her voice unsteady. "The human called has passed a test that has been failed for 12. She has shown that power does not require destruction. That strength can exist without cruelty. We do not know what this means for the future, but we believe it means something." The message continued. "We will watch with interest, and for the first time in our long history, we will watch with hope." The ships turned slowly and disappeared into the void. The Galactic Council summoned 3 weeks later. She traveled to Nexus Prime, the great station at the center of known space where representatives from every major species gathered to argue and negotiate and occasionally make peace. She went alone, though the heart floated beside her as always. The council chamber was vast, filled with thousands of beings of every shape and size. They watched in silence as the small human woman walked to the central platform. Many of them had expected her to come demanding power, to claim territory, to threaten those who had tried to destroy her. Instead, she bowed respectfully and spoke in a quiet voice. "I am not here to rule you," she said. "I am not here to threaten you or demand anything from you. I am here to offer a gift." The representatives murmured among themselves. This was not what they had expected. "The first builders created the heart for all their children," continued. "Not for one species, not for one empire, for everyone. They believed that someday we would be ready to live together in peace. They believed that we could become something greater than we are." She raised her hand, and the artifact floated above her palm, its inner galaxy spinning in eternal dance. "I want to build a place where that dream can become real, a station where representatives from every world can come to learn, not weapons technology, not military tactics, but the philosophy that the first builders left behind, the understanding that strength without compassion is meaningless, that power without wisdom only leads to destruction." The chamber was silent. Thousands of eyes watched the glowing sphere. "I am calling it the hearth," said, "and everyone is welcome. Those who want to conquer can stay away, but those who want to learn, those who want to build a better future will always have a place there." It took months to build, but it rose slowly in orbit around that small gray moon, a station like none the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been at war for centuries sent representatives to sit together in its classrooms. Children from 100 worlds played together in its corridors. never claimed leadership. She never gave orders or made demands. She simply taught, and those who came to learn carried her lessons back to there, spreading seeds of change across the stars. Captain returned to her survey work, though she visited the hearth whenever her travels brought her nearby. She never quite got used to her fame, but she learned to accept it with grace. Wrote a paper on his experiences that became required reading at medical academies across known space. He stayed at the hearth as its chief medical officer, healing the bodies of beings from 100 species, and in his quiet way, helping to heal the wounds between their peoples. Commander eventually came to the hearth as well. He did not come to learn at first. He came to understand why he had failed. But in the months he spent there, something changed inside him. He began to see the galaxy through different eyes. When he returned to the Empire, he carried those new eyes with him. Even Admiral Bora visited once, though she stayed only a single day. She and walked together through the station's corridors, two women from opposite ends of the galaxy who should have been enemies. "I still do not understand," Bora said. "How can you trust them? How can you trust any of us? We tried to kill you." Smiled, because distrust has never built anything worth keeping, because the first builders trusted us enough to leave their gift behind, even knowing what we might do with it. I want to be worthy of that trust. Bora was silent for a long moment. "You are either the person I have ever met," she said finally, "or the most foolish." "Perhaps both," replied. "I think wisdom and foolishness are often the same thing, seen from different angles." Years passed. The galaxy changed slowly, as galaxies always do. Wars still happened. Injustice still existed, but something was different now. There was a light at the center of known space, a reminder that another way was possible. And in the hearth, surrounded by beings from every corner of the galaxy, a quiet archaeologist continued to teach the lesson she had learned in an ancient chamber on an uncharted moon. That the greatest power was not the power to destroy. It was the power to choose not to offer mercy instead of vengeance, to build instead of break. The first builders had waited 12,000 years for someone to understand, had never stopped being that someone. And because of her, the galaxy had finally begun to grow up.